Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
On today's show, a shocking allegation of a child in the Northern Territory being held in a cage. Plus, we'll unpack why the RBA left rates on hold this month. Telstra is shedding jobs, and lots of them, while Hollywood superstar Scarlett Johansson might be suing ChatGPT in a case of life imitating art. And we'll leave you today with the new Trump movie that shocked an audience in Cannes. In our top story today, unpacking the RBA's decision to leave rates on hold.
So over the past 6 months, we've seen quite a few ups and downs in the data. Things are pretty bumpy, and I think I've used that term before. Obviously, we try to take a much longer view than just day-to-day, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter data points. But I think what the most recent data do reinforce is that we must continue to be vigilant about the continued risk of high inflation.
That's Michelle Bullock, Governor of the Reserve Bank, given her outlook on the economy at the RBA's monetary policy meeting at the start of this month. Well, now the full minutes of that meeting have been released to the public, and we have a better idea of why the RBA kept rates on hold. Here to explain more is business reporter Adrian Lowe. So, Adrian, long story short, what were the RBA afraid of doing if they hiked the cash rate again at the last meeting?
Ben, the minutes have really put this into quite a cute little phrase of they're concerned about excessive fine-tuning. Now, that means that they think that they're worried if they fiddle too much with interest rates, it's really just going to upset the economy. If they start hiking because of 1 month or 1 quarter's high inflation, it's going to put a lot of pressure onto consumers that they may need to then change back if they realise that the economy is actually just a little bit uncertain and there's a lot of movement going around at the moment. I think the governor called it noisy. The data is noisy at the moment. This means that there's a lot of volatility in the economy that we haven't really seen before. And I think a lot of economists that particularly that I speak to or that we hear talking about things at the moment, post the pandemic, we don't know what's going on. We haven't had a situation with unemployment below 4% for such a long time, where we've been recovering from high inflation and it's still above target, but that people are still well off financially. Now, I'm not saying that people are well off because they're paying off higher mortgages, but financially people are still okay. And actually the RBA noted today, or in the minutes that came out today, they said that people are saving more than they were expected to.
Yeah, it is very confusing, and for I think a lot of the general public who are novices at this sort of stuff, they're looking at all of these data points, going, what does it mean? There's talk of inflation, but it's not as bad as it was when it was at 8% in late 2022. You look at spending, consumer confidence, all of these different metrics that paint a confusing picture. Michelle Bullock called it bumpy. Is that just, I guess, a reflection that it is uncertain, not necessarily uncertain bad, but the RBA is concerned that if they fiddle too much, which we know is always a problem, they might tip it in an unexpected direction? Exactly.
And I think everyone is sort of perplexed at the moment, but I think what's concerning is that even the economists and the people who are paid to do this are a little perplexed as well. Now, that's not to say they don't know what to do, but they are uncertain because we don't have anything contextually in the past few decades to compare this to. Yeah, right. We haven't had, the pandemic was a once in 100-year health event. We don't have a similar economic textbook to model what should happen from here. The last time we had inflation so high was in the early 1990s when unemployment was, closer to 10%. We've had the opposite effect here where unemployment's gone to a level we have not seen since the 1970s. This is really why it's so bumpy, to borrow the governor's term.
And one little speed bump in the inflation road ahead could be the Stage 3 tax cuts, which are due to come online in July 1. There's new research from Westpac today. I know the RBA will be looking at the results of this Stage 3 tax cuts very closely. What did Westpac have to say?
Well, what's really interesting is that the RBA's modelled the Stage 3 tax cuts impact already, or what they expect anyway, because since the government made the changes to those Stage 3 tax cuts, it's been well known. So it's about $36 a week that the average household will get in addition. Westpac is saying that people will save that they're essentially thinking that they'll need to keep as much more money as possible in their savings accounts that they can. So that also goes for things like the household electricity credit that's coming from the federal government. Several states, I think Queensland is $1,000, WA is $400 for electricity, as well as every other stimulus that states are going to announce over the coming months where we have their budgets come out. People are going to save this money because they're concerned about the outlook. And that is what Westpac does. So they've measured consumer confidence for about 40 years now on a monthly basis. And the levels that we're seeing now are similar to the 90s recession because people are just so concerned about what comes next. The other complicating factor here is house prices are still at record highs in some cities or are well above where they should be given the economic outlook. So this is why everyone's talking about the bumpy road.
Yeah, and no doubt there's still some more bumps to come. Business reporter Adrian Lowe, thanks as always for making sense of this very complicated stuff.
Pleasure.
This is the Nightly Five with Ben O'Shea.
Alarming reports of a child being kept in a cage at an industrial site in the Northern Territory are being investigated by authorities. Territory Families and NT WorkSafe have confirmed they were alerted to the horrifying allegations relating to the treatment of a child believed to be aged around 2 to 3 years old earlier this month, according to reports in the NT News. The child was reportedly being held in a custom-made, makeshift, secure enclosure that witnesses have described as a cage at a Stewart Highway worksite. A Territory Families, Housing and Communities spokesperson said the safety of children was its top priority and any allegation of child harm was taken seriously. NT WorkSafe said it was alerted to the allegations on May 16 when NT Police raised a safety concern after reports that a young child had been secured in inappropriate conditions at a worksite. WorkSafe inspectors have begun an inquiry into the incident. Follow this story by downloading the Nightly app.
Telstra has revealed plans to sack up to 2,800 workers as part of its latest cost-cutting measures. The telco says the majority of the job cuts will happen by the end of the year.
Yes, telco giant Telstra plans to cut up to 2,800 jobs in a move the company says will help save $350 million. The potential job cuts announced today amount to about 9% of the company's workforce, with most of the axed roles to go by the end of the year. Chief Executive Vicky Brady said the changes were needed to ensure Telstra could continue to invest in supporting the ever-increasing growth in data volumes on its networks. Yes, you heard that right. Telstra is apparently sacking people because you stream too many HD videos and upload too many TikToks. The company said talks with workers and unions on initial cuts to nearly 400 jobs would start immediately, mainly from a reset of the telco's business-to-business enterprise division. It will also reshape some of its internal operations by shifting staff from its global business services into other parts of the company. Telstra blamed the cuts on an evolving competitive landscape, rapid advances in technology, changing customer needs, and ongoing inflationary pressures. But the Communications Workers Union said the announcement came out of the blue and thousands of workers had woken up to the news that their jobs were at risk. In case you're wondering, Telstra reported an increase in half-yearly income and profits in February on the back of strong growth in mobiles businesses.
Good morning, Theodore.
Good morning.
You have a meeting in 5 minutes. You want to try getting out of bed? Get up!
You're too funny.
That's Scarlett Johansson as a sentient AI assistant in the excellent 2014 movie Her, and Joaquin Phoenix playing the poor schmuck who falls in love with her. Well, in the case of life imitating art, Scarlett Johansson says she was forced to hire legal counsel to demand the removal of an artificial intelligence voice for OpenAI's chatbot that sounded too much like her. In a statement overnight, the actress said she received an offer from OpenAI Chief Executive Officer Sam Altman in September about voicing an audio feature for the company's popular ChatGPT chatbot. She said she decided not to participate in the project after much consideration and for personal reasons. Then last week, OpenAI released new audio tools and staged demonstrations that included a voice called Sky. Johansson said when she heard the released demo, she was shocked, angered and in disbelief that Mr. Altman would pursue a voice that sounded so eerily similar to hers. And this is probably not some accident. OpenAI's connection to the movie Her was made more explicit by Altman last week when the CEO posted the word her on the social platform X shortly after the launch of the company's latest AI model. OpenAI has since taken down the voice called Sky and replaced it with another voice called Juniper. Sky, Juniper and 3 other voices had been available since September, the same month Johansson said that OpenAI reached out to her. In a blog post, the company said Sky was not chosen to sound like Johansson. Sure, that's very believable.
See, this is what happens in life, Brett. And I've done it too. I've done really stupid things. But you did a really stupid thing.
I didn't think it was stupid at the time.
No, it's pretty stupid.
It was dumb.
That, of course, was former President Donald Trump when he was a reality TV star on The Apprentice, which also happens to be the name of a new movie about the controversial businessman, which premiered in Cannes overnight. And it's fair to say the movie has ruffled some feathers. And by feathers, I mean a weird reddish comb-over. Joining me now to unpack it all is culture editor at The Nightly, Wenley Ma. Wenley, what can you tell us about this new Trump movie from director Ali Abbasi?
Yeah, it's a movie that's been in the works for a while, and it's been one of those movies that I think everyone going into Cannes Film Festival was highly anticipating. How was it going to come out? Was it going to be like a satirical comedy? Was it going to be a eviscerating drama? I think it lands somewhere in the middle because Donald Trump, as we know, is a very big personality. No matter what you think of his politics, I don't think you can deny that he certainly has, I guess the word is presence. So this movie actually captures his days in the 1970s and 1980s when he was still a young man coming up in the business world of New York City. And it is about his, well, I guess he was a mentee of a very well-known firebrand conservative lawyer who was actually quite involved in the Joseph McCarthy trials in the US in the 1950s, Roy Cohn, who has since died. He was a very big personality as well, and he was known as someone who wasn't very compromising. And it's been well documented that Donald Trump and, you know, the kind of positions he holds now and the personalities and his approaches to things was very influenced by his association with Roy Cohn. So you've got Sebastian Stan, who is probably best known for playing Bucky Barnes in Marvel movies, playing the young Donald. Got Maria Bakalova, who was in Borat, Oscar nominated for Borat, playing Ivana Trump, and Jeremy Strong from Succession playing Roy Cohn. So it got a standing ovation, as almost everything does at Cannes, anywhere between 8 to 11 minutes, conflicting reports. Kate Blanchett was in the audience apparently, and she leapt to her feet, one of the first people, and like hugged Maria Bakalova because she was sat right in front of her. And since then, you know, not surprisingly, you know, people are either, well, they're definitely paying attention, but it's not surprising that it upset some people.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Sebastian Stan, I wouldn't have thought he was my first choice to be Donald Trump, but looking at some of the stills that have emerged today, I tell you, it's pretty uncanny. Just in the same way I thought he was a fantastic Tommy Lee as well, sort of transformational seems to be Sebastian Stan's vibe. And so you talk about it being polarising. It has generated a little bit of controversy from this screening overnight. What scenes do people seem to be talking about?
Yeah, so from reports within the theatre from industry rag trades like, you know, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, seems like audience members audibly gasped at certain scenes towards the end of the film. One depicted a rape between the on-screen version, the character of Donald Trump in the film against Ivana Trump. In real life, Ivana Trump did make those allegations against Donald Trump in 1989 divorce proceedings, but she later retracted those claims in 2015 and then she died in 2022. There were also scenes of Donald getting liposuction, which also kind of shocked audiences in the moment. There were a lot of scenes that I don't think puts him in the best light. You know, he's getting hair plugs, he's taking amphetamines for weight loss. You know, he's doing deals with underworld figures to push property deals through. And it's funny because one of the financial backers of the movie is a man named Dan Snyder, who is a big Trump supporter. He's a billionaire. And according to Variety, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes shenanigans where Dan Snyder is very upset because he thought that it would be a flattering portrait of Trump, and it really isn't.
That itself is bizarre. Well, the Trump campaign certainly don't think it's flattering. Their chief spokesperson, Stephen Chung, has said in a statement to one of those big entertainment Bibles, Variety, they said that we will be filing a lawsuit to address the blatantly false assertions from these pretend filmmakers. I don't know if you can call them pretend filmmakers. Ali Abbasi has won prizes at Cannes in the past. Pretty acclaimed filmmaker. They've gone on to say this garbage is pure fiction which sensationalizes lies that have been long debunked. So there we go. It's going to be interesting. What are the critics saying after the screening? Do they say it's any good?
It's a bit of a mixed reaction. I've seen some reviews that really praise, especially Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong and Maria Bakalova's performances in the movie. And, other critics have pointed out it's really difficult to sort of capture the essence and the inner workings and the interiority of a man who has spent decades performing in public with, an impression that I think, is so indelible in the public mind. So I think it's a bit of a mixed reaction. It'll be interesting to see for ourselves when it finally comes out, if it ever comes out. Personally, I think Trump's got enough legal problems without adding another lawsuit.
Yeah, indeed. And so talking about when it might come out, so the film has kind of been funded through sort of non-traditional studio sources. And so as a consequence of that, the distribution is a bit up in the air. Do we have any idea at all of when we might get to see this in Australia?
Not sure. I have made some calls to find out who might have picked up the distribution rights in Australia. No one's owned up to it yet. It certainly does not have distribution in the US. And apart from Dan Snyder, it seems like most of the funding has actually come from outside of America. So a couple of production companies in the UK and in Sweden, and some national film funding bodies in Canada, Denmark, and I can't remember what the last one was, but not the US. Oh, Ireland it was.
Yeah, right. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But certainly with this publicity, I think it makes it more likely than not that someone will step up if they're willing to take a bit of legal risk, perhaps. Culture editor at The Nightly, Wenley Ma, always great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And that, folks, is today's show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join me again tomorrow on The Nightly 5.
The Nightly 5 podcast is brought to you by 7 West Media. For all these stories and more, head to thenightly.com.au, helping you get in front of tomorrow.